Over time, the heart has come to symbolize the center of emotion. Whether you favor the stylized Valentine's version or you're more of a fan of the realistic image, we humans love our hearts. We ache for them, break for them, bleed for them, and even cross them hoping to die. But even if you're not into the mushy-gushy stuff, at least we can all agree that everyone needs a heart. In fact, we can't exactly live without one, can we? Modern medicine has come a long way in the past few years, and, as it turns out, a heart may become an optional organ. From artificial hearts to bodybuilders without a pulse, here are 6 individuals who are literally heartless. Stan Larkin. It seems impossible that anyone could live even a day without a heart. And yet, 25-year-old athlete Stan Larkin defied the odds by living for more than a year without this vital organ. He and his brother Dominic were both diagnosed with a condition known as familial cardiomyopathy when they were only children. This genetic condition meant that their hearts could fail suddenly at any point in their lives. When cardiologist Jonathan Haft first met the two men in 2014, they were incredibly sick. They'd been on the waiting list for a donor for years, but they were running out of time. It was in this moment that doctors deemed it necessary to completely remove their nearly spent hearts and replace them with an artificial device called a syncardia. Rather than help correct or restart an odd rhythm like a pacemaker or implant defibrillator, syncardia is designed to replace a dead heart. It takes up the spot of the old organ, pumping oxygenated blood throughout the body. But it's not exactly the easiest thing to wear 24/7. Dominic was able to find a heart donor within weeks of living on the device, but Stan lived for 555 days, carrying around a 6-kilogram or 13.5-pound portable Freedom driver so his device could continue working. He was unable to pick up and carry his own daughters, but he did manage to surprise doctors by being able to play a bit of basketball. Almost 2 years of literally carrying his heart on his sleeve, Stan got his new heart on May 9th in 2016, and is sharing his story in hopes that it will inspire others to never give up, no matter how bleak things may seem. Randy Shepard. After suffering from rheumatic fever as a child, Randy Shepard was left with some serious heart issues that affected his health throughout his entire childhood. He had open heart surgery at the age of 17, and that seemed to fix things for much of his adult life. But after further heart complications, he found himself back in the hospital in desperate need of a new heart. But there was no heart to be found. Doctors acted quickly, replacing the broken and failing heart with a syncardia total artificial heart. This miracle machine pumped blood through Randy's body in place of a flesh and blood organ. As you can imagine, his activity level with the syncardia had to be pretty low. But even not having a heart couldn't stop him from honoring the life of war hero Pat Tillman. It took Randy an hour and 40 minutes, but he walked the whole 4.2-mile marathon in remembrance of Tillman, while essentially carrying his heart on his back. He's now sharing his day-to-day experiences and what it was like to complete a marathon with an artificial heart. Randy hopes that this walk will not only inspire those with heart issues like himself to never give up, but also that anything is possible. So never stop being the person you want to be, no matter what the odds. While the technology that allowed him to complete this challenge is still experimental and considered only a temporary solution, the hope is that one day, syncardia could serve as a permanent replacement in situations where transplants from another human being are either too risky or unwanted. Craig Lewis. Facing the certain end of a loved one's life during a long battle with a tragic disease is a thing no one should ever have to face. Unfortunately for 55-year-old Craig Lewis's family, this feeling was all too familiar. Craig was in a coma, slowly fading away from liver and kidney disease. Craig couldn't speak, couldn't sit up, and his heart was toast. He was approached by Dr. Billy Cohn and Dr. O.H. Frazier, MD, at the Texas Heart Institute in Houston. There was no way to completely save their loved one, but with a new heart, there was a chance to be able to increase his quality of life for whatever time he had left. Previously, the device had been successfully tested on young cows, and Craig was the first human recipient of the device. But their highly experimental procedure worked. They took out his heart and replaced it with 2 intricately connected pumps. The device curled over itself, spinning blood around his body in a continuous loop, rather than going through the usual pumping action. This left him with no pulse, only a hum when doctors listened via stethoscope. For 5 weeks, Craig was able to sit up and enjoy his last moments with his loved ones. Ultimately, his liver function decayed, and the family decided to shut off the artificial heart to allow him to pass before he could suffer any more pain. Dejana Simons. Going through with a heart transplant is traumatic enough for an adult, but when doctors discovered that 14-year-old Dejana Simons had an enlarged heart and would need to have it replaced if she ever hoped to reach her 18th birthday, she and her family were suddenly facing the very real fact of her mortality. But she was young and she managed to survive long enough to move up the waiting list and get a heart. This young teenager couldn't have been more excited, but that joy turned to terror when her body immediately rejected the new heart. Still on the operating table with nothing but a gaping hole where a heart should be, doctors did the only thing they could. With no other heart to give her, they implanted 2 pumps into Dejana's chest. Normally, this type of artificial heart had the old malfunctioning heart to assist in the process of pumping blood through the body. But Dejana's heart had already been completely removed. All that was standing between her and the Grim Reaper were 2 little tubes and a computer-controlled pump. Miraculously, this little fighter survived for a full 4 months, 118 days to be exact, on this simple contraption until a new heart was found and successfully transplanted into her body. What could have easily ended in tragedy turned out to be a story about a young girl beating all the odds and finding a very long future ahead of her. Jacob Halik. Some of the people on our list have survived through the life-saving power of a particular artificial heart, but not Jacob Halik. A firefighter and beloved family man with a wife and 12-year-old son, Jacob had dedicated his life to serving others. But life has a cruel sense of humor, and it turned out that the man with such a big heart had a bad one. When doctors discovered an aggressive cancerous growth on Jacob's heart, they warned him that finding a suitable heart for a man his size would be difficult. To further complicate matters, any attempt at transplant while he was still being treated for cancer was doomed to fail. In order for a transplant to be successful, undergoers have to take heavy-duty immune suppressants so their bodies don't reject the new organ. Already weak from cancer itself and the process of treating it, Jacob's high-wire cells would have almost certainly metastasized to other parts of his body. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, doctors opted to perform a risky and controversial procedure. They removed the artificial heart completely and replaced it with 2 simple pumps, one for the right side, one for the left. Jacob lived 6 months with no heart, not even a pulse. While he wasn't able to go home, he wore the controller to his pumps in a relatively small backpack and was able to roam the hospital on his own power. He even visited the hospital gym for a little light exercise. Unfortunately, in October of 2012, Jacob succumbed not to his lack of heart, but to liver and kidney failure. Doctors were unable to pinpoint the exact cause of this acute organ failure, but maintained that it was not due to his lack of heart. Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones is an active 26-year-old bodybuilder who enjoys an active lifestyle and spends quite a bit of time at the gym. You might think all the working out would get his blood pumping, but that's the thing. Andrew has no pulse. In fact, he doesn't actually have a functioning heart. Diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, this young man suffers from a condition that affects his heart's ability to properly pump blood throughout his body. With no donor in obvious sight, doctors decided to augment Andrew's faulty heart with the combination of inserting a battery-powered pump and a pacemaker. This pump, called a left ventricular assist device, or LVAD, is carryable in a small backpack and completely rechargeable. Andrew actually plugs himself in each night while he sleeps in order to recharge his own heart. This particular device is designed to assist patients waiting for a transplant while allowing users to continue their normal day-to-day functions. But Andrew surprised even doctors by being able to maintain his previous level of activity. He admitted that, at first, he had trouble wrapping his head around having an artificial heart. But it didn't take him long to decide that his little setback wasn't going to keep him from doing the things he loved. He since started Hearts at Large, an organization dedicated to helping people waiting for or going through with a heart transplant, and hopes that maybe he can offer just a little hope to people in such dark times in their lives. That concludes our piece on 6 people who are living without a heart. What did you think? Who was the most interesting? And what would you do if you were in their shoes? Is there someone we might have missed? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell for a chance to be the first one notified whenever we post new content. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.